Hello, everybody, and welcome to one of our fantastic early careers webinars. So today we're going to be looking beyond your CV and how you actually practically land your first professional role. And we have got the most fantastic set of panelists with us today. I'm really, really excited to hear all of their opinions and tips and tricks looking back at their early careers, but also as they advise people coming into their companies and starting out, whether that's internships, apprenticeships, graduate schemes. We're going to cover that whole variety today. But before I get into the discussion, a few little things. So first of all, by way of introduction, I am Molly. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Flexa. And Flexa is the platform that enables you to discover companies based on what you really care about. So probably most pertinently today, that's going to be companies with a big focus on early careers, on learning and development, on career progression. But you can also search for things like hybrid working or a great culture, or amazing female leadership, or diversity representation, or age inclusivity. So we have over 15,000 filter combinations on Flexa that you can use to really find your ideal and perfect companies to transition into in your career. So please do feel free to check that out. But without further ado, I am going to hand over to our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves, because I probably won't do it justice. So first of all, to kick us off, could you introduce yourself, Rosine?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So my name is Rosine. I'm originally from Belgium. You might hear a little bit of an accent. But over the past 10 years, I had the privilege to work and live in China, now in the UK. And that really shaped my curiosity, adaptability, passion for understanding people across culture. What I'm doing, I'm the campus engagement strategy for EMEA and EMEA. And it's just helping connect the next generation of talents who has critical tech sales and customer facing skills to thrive at SAP across 30 plus countries. What do we do at SAP? So we often say that SAP is the coolest company you've never heard of, because behind the scenes, 84% of global commerce flows through our technology. So from the Adidas on your feet to the iPhone in your pocket, we kind of do that a little bit in the background. And every day we try to make industry more sustainable, business smarters, and big ideas real. So that's about SAP. So if you're a curious mind, maybe that's your next step.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Claire, it'd be lovely for you to introduce yourself and your company as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Molly. So afternoon, everyone. So as Molly said, my name's Claire. So I've also got over 10 years experience leading early careers recruitment strategies. I think that gives away age, doesn't it, when you start putting it into years? I've initially spent my early careers career working in the accountancy and professional services sector. And my current role is now moved over to engineering. So I work in the engineering industry. My full job title, and it's a mouthful, is UK and Europe Early Careers Talent Acquisition Manager. Ultimately, what that means, my role at Mott MacDonald is to deliver impactful talent acquisition strategies to hire the workforce of the future across all of our early careers programs, be it apprenticeships, placements, and our graduate career paths as well. If you haven't heard of Mott MacDonald, we're a global engineering, management, and development consultancy. Think bridges, not burgers. We're definitely not McDonald's. But what we do essentially is design, plan, and manage projects that basically improve people's lives and then the world we live in. Easiest way to describe us is to think of us as like problem solvers for some of the biggest challenges that the world is facing, and we solve those problems in a variety of sectors. So we work in energy, transport, water, and then buildings infrastructure, and we look at solving those challenges from things like creating sustainable transport systems, clean water supplies, and things like renewable energy as well. We're not just engineers actually, so it's obviously a huge part of what we do. We call it our bread and butter, but we have lots of specialisms in Mott MacDonald in other areas. So anything from like project managers to environmental and sustainability experts, right through to data specialists and architects. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Becky, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Becky. I'm the Global Employer Brand Manager at Vodafone. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have probably heard of Vodafone. But we are a global telecommunications company across Europe and Africa. We have over 300 million customers, so we work on a huge scale, but we're a very purpose-driven organisation. So everything we do is around connecting for a better future. we, obviously we're founded around telecommunications, but we do some really cool, innovative stuff as well. So just a really quick thing I wanted to share with you is earlier this year, we were the world's first company to make a video call from space. So we're not just your, standard mobile phones. There's so much more to Vodafone. Me, myself, I started my career as a HR graduate in Royal Mail. I've then kind of done lots of roles over the years, but started to manage some of our early careers programs. I've always felt very passionately about early careers, having started my career as one myself, and now I'm the employer brand manager at Vodafone. So essentially, we look at how we attract amazing talent into Vodafone, and early careers is obviously a really important part of that for us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Gina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Gina. I am the employer brand manager at Northern, and I sit within the talent acquisition team. Like a lot of people on this call, over 10 years experience within that industry, within the recruitment industry as a whole. Probably about 70% of that has now been specialised within attraction, recruitment, marketing, employer brand. And my role at Northern, essentially, I look after everything attraction. So that does include employer brand, our EVP, the employer value proposition, and I oversee all of the future careers activities. Now, we call it future careers because that does include the early careers roles, but also the partnerships we have in place with different organisations that support that social mobility piece, such as ex-offenders, veterans, and everything in that kind of space as well. So if you're from the north of England, or if you've ever been to the north of England, chances are you've been on one of our trains. Our network does span the entirety of the north, so coast to coast. Most people just think drivers, conductors, when they think about jobs in rail. But it's my role, my team's role, to really break down those barriers and showcase just how rewarding and varied a career in rail can be, and how there genuinely is something for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. And just quickly to the audience, this is very much an interactive session where we would love you to be able to get the most out of this time that you're spending listening. So the first kind of half an hour, 40 minutes, we will be discussing amongst ourselves around early careers, what the differences are, how you can get into it. But please do drop your own personal questions into the comment section and they will come through to us. So then we'll spend the last 20 minutes tackling any of those individual questions that might have come through. So please don't be shy. We will definitely answer all of them and hopefully give you as many kind of actionable tips and really answer any of those things that might have been on your mind. I loved how you all kind of introduced yourself and talked about obviously your early careers experience. And I thought it was something that might be very useful for people, particularly learning about how people kind of got into the roles that they're doing. Because I started my career in a graduate scheme as well in investment banking at a Japanese bank called Nomura. And I went through the Deloitte Scholar Scheme as well. So gap year and then individual kind of university placements. So very familiar with the different kind of avenues in. But I suppose I'd love to start with a more personal kind of short question of when you first started your careers, what drew you to do what you started doing? And I would love to start with Becky there.
Yeah, I think for me, so I was at university, I knew I wanted to apply for a graduate program. For me, it was about, I'd learned at university, but I wanted to put it into practice in a real world environment. So for me, I thought a rotational graduate program was exactly what I was looking for. So that's what I did. I wanted to find one that would also sponsor my CIPD because that was really important to me that, some companies do fund that. So it would support my professional development, but also my experience from being able to rotate through different teams. And I think for me, that's probably the main driver for why people probably do join some graduate programs is that ability to be able to try different teams, see what you like, so that when you finish that program, you've got a good sense of what next step to look like. So for me, that's what I was looking at, was what I found at Royal Mail.
Wonderful to hear. And Gina, what about you?
So I didn't go down a traditional graduate apprentice or anything sort of route with me. I went to university very briefly, didn't finish it. So I'm part of No Degree Club over here. I went to university to do psychology with psychotherapy and counselling. I had a huge passion for people, still do, but I think it was really about unlocking kind of what I had a passion for, what I knew I wanted to do with that and try and find a route that fit that. There's a bit of an age-old statement in the recruitment industry that you just fall into recruitment. And that was a little bit of the case for me, but at the same time, I knew that I wanted to work with people, and actually it was the HR space, the recruitment space, it was actually pushed as a bit of a, do you know what, this is a really good place to start your career. And as I started to do those entry-level roles and work my way up within that agency space, I really started to find that passion for the more creative. And I'm a very creative, marketing sort of driven person anyway. So to be able to combine the two and doing it in a way that unlocks the psychology side of me that interests it, but also with the creativity. And now I'm applying that in ways of how do or different audience think of things, where do people go to look at information, and using it in a different way. So again, it's kind of about figuring out what makes you tick a little bit, what your skills are, what you are really interested in, and finding a way to make that work for you in a particular career path. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Rosine, what about you?
Yeah. So I agree with Gina. I fell into recruitment. I have a translation background, actually. So I have a master in translation, French, English, and Mandarin, but knew that I didn't want to work in translation. So I also kind of looked at program that would give me other skills on top of my language skills. So I did a bit of sales, import and export program. I hated every bit of it, but still finished and managed to take the learnings from it. And then I fell into that program in HR. My things that I really wanted in a career was to use my languages. So I think one thing that is important is actually know what is a non-negotiable and what we want to actually get or learn from a graduate scheme or role. So that's what led me to HR. So in that role and that program, they needed my languages. So I was like, okay, they're going to teach me the HR bit, but I'm going to use what I actually studied and I'm going to put it in a practical way, in a different way. And that's how I fell into HR. And then it was just like kind of a rolling ball and leading me to like China and back to UK and all of that. So yeah.
Brilliant. I think that's such valuable advice, knowing what your kind of non-negotiables are. And they'll also change over time. Like I remember when I left university and started in investment banking, I thought my non-negotiables were working in a really prestigious industry, putting a suit on, earning lots of money. And I thought that was what was really cool. And that's what I wanted to do. So hence why I chose that. Whereas actually 3 years afterwards, my priorities really changed. Yeah. And I think it's very natural, like as you go through your career, what you'll start thinking is super important may well stay the same for the rest of your life, but it may well change as well. Yeah. Claire, I would love to kind of understand how you started in your career.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I think that point around things can change, and I think there's no straight path to success. And I think sometimes we always think, oh, I've done this degree and I'm going to end up in this place, and I am that person. So I'm legally trained, so I did a law degree, went to law school and practiced for a while, and probably halfway through knew it actually wasn't for me, but continued on that journey to achieve the academics and then to give it a go and go into practice. And I think one of the other panelists mentioned it around as well. It's really knowing what your strengths are. And I think actually in the roles that I was in the legal careers are brilliant, just wasn't for me. And actually some of the elements that I really enjoyed, I thought, well, let's take that, let's play to my strengths, let's play to what I enjoy. So the people skills, talking to people, and take it forward. So landed, fallen into recruitment and haven't looked back since, really. So I think it's just that piece around, don't worry if you feel like your path sort of goes jagged, and then you can end up having a great career and one that makes you very happy. It doesn't necessarily always have to follow the academic career path that you thought would be in front of you.
Totally agree with that, especially as we have to pick what we want to do at university, or at least have an idea of it so young.
Even at school, really, I had to think about A-levels that would gear me up to the right university course. So it's so early on.
And we can't know, like I definitely didn't know what jobs were available. I thought it was just like lawyer, investment banking, doctor, vet. That was it. There wasn't much variety within that. And so I think it's such a natural thing that will develop and change. So actually, speaking of which, let's kind of rewind back to whether you're thinking about going to university, whether you're thinking about starting work straight out of school, whether you just want to get a taster in terms of internships or placements, what should we start by kind of breaking down the key differences between those things? So if we look at graduate schemes, apprenticeships, and kind of direct entry roles, how should somebody decide which one is right for them? Gina, I would love to start with you.
Yeah, no problem. They're all so different and so similar at the same time. But when you're thinking about graduate schemes, they're usually, well, 99% of the time, they're people who have a degree. Occasionally, you'll find ones that are more future leaders, where they might be a bit more lenient on having that degree, but they're usually structured, very structured. They've got the rotations, set development, set mentoring, and allows you a bit more freedom to kind of explore and find your feet again, if you're not sure what you want to do. Apprenticeships, on the other hand, it is a cliche, but you get to earn while you learn. You go straight into those skills. You get that recognised qualification, which again is ideal if you do want that practical experience right from the word go. Direct entry roles, which again is kind of the route I went into, I suppose, where you really kind of like build your skills up, you learn on the job. That they tend to focus more on that immediate impact, I guess, and that you're doing well, the feedback and that direct kind of improvement. You join a team, you're surrounded by other people kind of going through that, and you're learning from your peers, which again has a lot of strengths. But it's really interesting, especially to hear the different ways we've all kind of come into our careers. It's probably, I think, the best route for an individual will be based on how they learn. I'm quite a visual, hands-on type of person, so whilst I enjoyed school, whilst I enjoyed the learning side of things, and I love a good book, I love retraining and things, and an audiobook I like doing. I have to do it to kind of get it. But if you want more of that structure, and if you come straight from that education environment where it is more classroom based, then it could be that graduate program is better suited to you, or the apprenticeship route where you've got a blend of classroom and on the job. So for me, it's more around how you learn and how to find the best one. But I do think there's value in every single route.
Brilliant. That's a really useful overarching summary. Thank you. And Rosine, what would you kind of add to that in terms of the breakdown of those different ways in, and maybe what's right for different people, or the advantages and disadvantages of both?
So I totally agree with what Gina said. It was spot on. It's really about the way you're learning. I think maybe what you watch a little bit about is like that structured program has a clear framework for the learning and career development. So you have mentorship and stronger peer network, all of that. But the trade-off is that it's a program that follows a set pace. So if you're like, oh, I'm not sure that I want to keep going, this is not for me, I want to move faster, I'm getting bored, this is harder to shift because you're in that structured program, basically. So that could be the trade-off. And then for entry-level roles, as Gina mentioned, you have more freedom, flexibility, impact right away, but you do need to be very hands-on. You do need to like power through your career and where you want to go, and do that networking and being very focused on that role that you're doing and the path that you want to follow. So like, I think there's no right or wrong. I think, as we all say, it's just different path that leads you to your successful career the way you want to define it.
Totally agree with that. And Claire, would you add anything there?
Yeah, I think I'd maybe add just a couple of other points that the other panelists haven't touched on. So I think maybe direct entry routes in comparison to grad schemes, the competitive element, not to say they're less a position or less an opportunity, it's just the volume of applications. And I think we'd probably all see that. For Mott MacDonald, for our graduate career path, we're in busy season at the moment. We're currently on 12,000 applications for 350 grad roles. So I think it's that balancing that direct entry sometimes comes with less competition for graduate spaces. And then maybe the other timing. So all of our graduate roles start at one particular time of the year, so that's September. And actually, if you've already graduated, you've already got your degree, or you're looking for an opportunity now, that direct entry level kind of entry in is a good opportunity to get that experience rather than wait. We don't have much flexibility on our start dates. Some other employers do, so that's also something to consider. Some graduate employers will take like a January intake. We have some flexibility, but our main intake is September, so I think timing is also a differentiator there.
Yeah, totally agree with that. It's a good point in terms of if you've already graduated and you're looking, then you might not want to wait until September. And Becky, would you have anything to add in terms of like what might be right for the individual, what the pros are, the cons are?
Yeah, the only other couple of things I would add is I think if you join as a grad or an apprentice, there is something to be said about that community that you're part of. And definitely that's a huge thing for us at Vodafone, whether that's socials, learning. You bring people together who are going through a similar shared experience as you. And I know from myself, from being on a program, that was really important. So I think that's definitely a benefit of those. I also think with the apprenticeship program, we do have some people who complete their apprenticeship and then go on to a graduate program. Now that's not everybody, but again, there are paths there, like what we were saying. Once you've completed one, that's not your journey ended. There are then different options for you to consider. We also have people who come in as direct hires who still then undertake an apprenticeship. So you can still come in as a direct hire and then convert onto an apprenticeship or a graduate program potentially. So again, they do cross over in a multitude of ways.
Yeah.
So they're the kind of other things I would add.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, like that social side of a grad scheme. Like I look back at mine, it was basically like a redo of Freshers Week. So like there definitely is that hugely social side. Like you do make friends that you keep. Like I've still got one really good friend from my grad scheme that I'm still in touch with and see a lot. And so that is a huge plus. But on the flip side, Claire, to your point, they are hugely competitive and they do take a lot of preparation. I think a really big one is that very often people see grad schemes and they think, oh, they're all the same. And so you might have a tendency to just fire off a really similar application, whereas we'll get into it later in terms of advice, but they're so competitive that you really do need to tailor and think about why you want to go to that particular grad scheme. I think also just from an apprenticeship perspective, there's been a huge shift over the last few years. Like it used to be that apprenticeships were very practical and kind of hands-on focused. And it would be that you might be an apprentice plumber or mechanic or electrician. Whereas now there's been an uptick in terms of apprenticeships. So people being taken into much more kind of like professional services roles on apprenticeship schemes rather than it just being practical. So it's kind of changed from it being more of a blue collar role into also becoming more opportunities on the white collar side as well. So actually, I'd love to kind of focus on that, and that's just wonderfully segued myself into it, because I know that there'll be a lot of people watching that maybe don't fit that traditional graduate mold, whether that's like Gina, where you started at university and then it didn't work out as the right thing, or perhaps university just very much wasn't for you, or you might have left school at 16. Or taken a gap year and you're wondering or second guessing maybe university isn't for you right now. What advice would you have for people in that position in terms of opportunities that might exist and how they should start thinking about their career? Claire, I'd love to come to you first.
Yeah, certainly. So I think apprenticeships, like you said, would be a great option for those that haven't had a university degree background or are looking for something else. So we offer at Mott MacDonald, this is quite similar in the market, 2 levels of apprenticeship. So we'll have like a level 3. So it's those with GCSEs as a minimum entry criteria, because they'll all have entry criteria. So we offer advanced apprenticeships for level 3, and then a level 6, which is slightly longer in duration, but looks for those that have got A levels. For us, because we are on that engineering side, maths tends to be a big thing in terms of having that minimum grade requirement, and then we have some flexibility either side. But I think there's no time limit for our apprenticeships. You can apply when you are 16 and you can apply when you are 36. So I think that's a real value of apprenticeships, is we don't have a time limit to when you're eligible to apply, but there will be some general grades that you need because they're very much, like most employers, attached to the training provider that we work with. Really good for career changes. We have these applications, and we've got some great success stories at Mott MacDonald. We've had a teacher that's now a qualified civil engineer and has gone on to do their chartership and did that through the apprenticeship route. We also have programs outside of the apprenticeship where, like, STEM returners. So if, for example, you've been out of industry for a while but you have got a background in a STEM kind of environment, we've got a program that brings you back into work. So I think looking at those kind of programs, entry level from apprenticeships, but perhaps ones that require a bit of experience but encourage women back into the workforce, or those that have, been out of the industry for a while as well. So those could be the options.
Super useful advice. I also heard a brilliant transferable skills story earlier when we were chatting to another company on Flexa, and they were saying that they found that there's one role where it's like super like fiddly engineering, and the highest success rate of recruitment into that is from nail technicians.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah.
into defence. I say that with my nails done, but into defence from doing nails, because it's like super intricate and really detailed, and they're absolutely brilliant at it. So many different ways in, and so many different kind of transferable skills. Becky, I would love to come to you in terms of that advice of those non-traditional entry pathways.
Yeah, another one I was going to add is, look out there for things like boot camps or events. So we do something called Code Like a Girl, where we bring young girls in and train them on how to code and gain new skills to then potentially apply for a job at Vodafone or elsewhere. So it's all about equipping people with new skills. So again, it doesn't have to be a direct program or role. What are the other opportunities for you to upskill yourself, learn about that organisation, and then see where that may lead you?
Brilliant advice. I really like that. And Gina, I'd love to come to you in terms of how people should approach it, leaving school or potentially not going to university.
Yeah, I mean, I just think overall the world of early careers has changed so much. I think it was very traditional, and it was very much that grad scheme focus, probably less than 10 years ago. And as apprentices started to grow more, and then the degree apprenticeships started to really take up as well, like I just think it's really shifted now, and I think that's why when I talk about my sort of remit, and we call it future careers rather than early careers, because so much of that is career changes as well. And people, like I said, we do a lot of work with like veterans and people that have been in the forces, and then they're literally, it's all based on transferable skills. Again, similar to the nail technician, example that you just gave, it's exactly that. There's so many different routes now that are non-traditional sort of set backgrounds. I mean, all of our train driver and conductor positions start off on an apprenticeship. So again, it's when I say there's no bar to entry, obviously it does require a certain skill set to do those roles. I certainly don't think I've got what it takes to be a train driver, but that you could do that because you would get trained and you would be given that, and that's the start of that career. You've got that kind of set development. So we get a lot of career changes going into those operational roles, and very similar to what you were saying, Claire, we've had people from hospitality moving into an operations role, and same with engineering. So it isn't necessarily just the younger sort of generation of talent. What we do have more in that space, so as well as the graduate program, we have a year in industry. So when you're doing your sort of sandwich course at university, if that is the route that you're going down, and we find that a lot of people that have done the year in industry with us, that sort of in-depth, extensive work experience year placement, paid placement, I should say, they do then come back and often do the graduate scheme as well, because they've done that sort of taster, and then they come back and want to then do the rotations and explore further and find that pathway for them. So yeah, I think looking at programs is a really good start as well. There's a lot of things, I don't think we've necessarily got a set boot camp, but we do loads of different things. Never mind the gap in rail, where we bring women who've had a career break back into the industry. We do all sorts, like I say, with the armed forces, ex-offenders, we've got employment days. And I think it's just things like that. There will be a program for you that fits, that is more of that work experience, that just helps you. When we talk about that competitive nature, it really just gives you that edge, and you've sort of already done a bit of homework and explored that. So I think there's a lot of different routes, but explore programs as well, the unpaid side, because I think that's really valuable in quite a competitive market.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I went through the Nomura Women in Investment kind of 2-week spring week when I was at university, and then eventually ended up funneled through to their grad scheme. So it can make a really big difference to have a look at those short programs. Rosine, I would love to hear from you as well, if you have anything to add based on top of everything.
Yeah, nothing much, but I think like we touched on it, but the transferable skills. So for me, it's just like skills is your professional currency, basically. So look at the currency that you currently have. Do I have those soft skills? Do I have those hard skills? This is the type of role that I would want to have. What is the missing gaps that I have here? And then what are those courses and classes that I can maybe do on a short-term basis that can kind of help me build those skills that I'm lacking? or can I do it on the job as the graduate schemes that we mentioned? So I think for me, it's really that. Just look at what you have in terms of skills in your pocket and how you can build that. For example, in ACP, we have our learning platform, which is free for students, so they can get ACP certified for free. Just need to register to the platform. So you have a lot of those that you can do to just build your skills. And I think a lot of companies also shifting in terms of looking at skills instead of just looking at your CV and the hard degree that you've had. So let's look at that.
Awesome. Really valuable advice. Thank you so much for taking us through all of that. And I suppose, we've touched on it in a couple of areas, but we've talked about the competitiveness, particularly of graduate schemes. But I suppose looking at early careers in general, what makes, beyond kind of university prestige and grades, what makes an early careers application stand out to you? Becky, I would love to start with you.
Yeah, and I think this is a difficult one, as some of us have said. When you are having thousands of applications, there has to be some sort of mechanism in place to obviously filter that. So for us, the initial stages are your CV, then some online testing before you then get to an assessment centre. And I think that can be frustrating for people because you want to do that in person, you want to show the skills that you have, and unfortunately sometimes there's a bit to get through before you get to that point. So I think my advice with that would be just focus what you can on the skills piece, like we've already talked about. It doesn't matter what university you've been to, what you've studied. Think about the skills that are transferable to that program you're applying for, that organisation. There are obviously things out there to help you to be able to do that. So, we know AI is huge right now, so that can help you to structure your CV and pull out those skills and match it to the program you're applying for. So do that, I recommend it, but use it to guide you and support you, not speak for you, because that's something we're definitely starting to see. So that would be the things I would focus on. Then when you get to the stages like a video interview, for example, prior to the assessment centres, again, what makes someone stand out is their ability to be able to give real examples, pulling out those transferable skills, self-awareness, a growth mindset, wants to learn, wants to develop. So just focusing on what those things are, and they can be different depending on the different companies you're applying for as well. So just tailor it as much as you possibly can.
Really valuable advice. Rosine, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Sure. I would say, and I know that it might sound cliche, but it's you. You're the big differentiator. Your personality, curiosity, what you bring on the table. When we interview you, we hire based on your skills, your potential, your mindset, the type of person that you are. So showcase that. Obviously, like Becky mentioned, just make sure that you do your homework in terms of like tailoring your CV, like making sure you upload your CV on a PDF format and you have like a great format, the spelling errors checking and all of those things. So you pass through the grid. But then once you have that opportunity to just speak with people in person, show yourself like what makes you unique, and like have this mindset of, oh, I want to have this person think about me in a way, like that interviewer reminds who I am. And I like to share a funny experience that I had when I got into my graduate program. I was asked to sing in Chinese in my graduate program interview. And how it came about, it was a full day bootcamp journey. We shared about fun facts. And I said, one of my fun facts at university, my teacher loved to send me to those competition to sing Chinese over there. And then I shared that. And at the end of the day, the hiring manager was just like, well, you talked about that fun fact. I'd love to hear you sing in Chinese. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to do it? Like, I had a minute of hesitation, but it was part of who I am. I love singing. I've been in gospel choir my whole life. So it was just like, well, why not?
Yes.
I've just done it, and I made an impression because the whole room started being quiet, and they remember me as the girl who sings in Chinese at the end of the interview. So, and now it's a fun fact story I can share. So,
and we won't forget.
Exactly. So I'm like, do what is about you and that make you unique. And I'm sure like you can't be wrong with that, because if they see you and they like it, then it's also a good fit in terms of that, because you actually showed yourself.
Totally agree with that. I think it's super important to bring that personality through, because a lot of people don't do that, and it tends to, a lot of applications can feel very similar, and it's a natural opportunity to really stand out. Gina, I would love to hear from you.
I don't know how to follow that, Rosine. That was incredible, and I think you've summed it up perfectly. A lot of the things I was going to talk about was around authenticity, and you have completely summed up how to be unapologetically you. So, yeah, I just echo that entirely. For me as well, that curiosity piece, which I know we've spoken about as well, and really kind of, when someone can show us that they understand who we are as an organisation, what our purpose is, a bit about our customers, our value, it does stand out straight away. And, you know, people that have done their research, as we've said, people that can connect what we do with what motivates them as well, and find that piece to tie it together. I would much rather see a personal, thoughtful answer than a perfectly polished one that could apply to any company. So yeah, echoing the statements that everyone else made, but authenticity, curiosity for me.
Amazing, thank you. And Claire?
Yeah, I agree with everything the panelists have said. I'll bring in the point that Becky mentioned about our AI, because we have written application forms as part of our process. It's the middle part, online strengths application form, then an interview. So how you stand out now for us is don't use it in your answers, because unfortunately so many people do. And look, we're not discrediting the brilliant benefits of AI in business. We absolutely appreciate and use it. We have access to Copilot. It's not that. It's exactly as the panelists have said. This is about you, why you want to work for this company, what your experiences tailored, unique to you are, and we want to hear about that. So actually, I think now using AI would actually be a disadvantage in an application written process, because so many do use it. And exactly that, we want to know what makes you you and why you want to work at Mott MacDonald if you are applying, for example. So it's about bringing your authentic self, even through the written form. Use it for research, don't use it to answer, because actually now you'd be the standout one with not using it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If it's unedited and hasn't originally come from you, you can really tell. I think, you know, there's value, to your point, in using it for research, in helping to structure the way that you might answer a question, things like that. Never have it writing for you. And I think, you know, we touched briefly on CVs, and I think it's very often really difficult when you are early in your career journey to know what to put on a CV, because, you know, you haven't got the standard work experience that everybody else has. And my advice would be to keep it super short, to keep it as one page, highlight what makes you you, to Rosine's point around, and have you been able to go into some of those programs, or have like any training in certain areas that you're looking to go into in your career. Really pull those examples out. Same with your own interests. If you happen to have brought anything that might be transferable into your career, like have you worked somewhere during a summer? Did you go and do something interesting during one of your holidays? Have you built something on the side, like a website or a little e-commerce, like drop shipping, you know, anything it could be. Just talking about how that's given you that valuable career experience on a CV, I think is super important, alongside the standard stuff of university grades, any societies you were in, what modules you did. But you don't need to worry, because we're not assessing early careers CVs against people with 10 years of experience CVs. It's very much a totally different ball game. And so it's just making sure that your own drive, motivation, curiosity, and personality come out on that piece of paper, as well as in those answers. And I think very often it's easy to see forms or questions in an application process as quite frustrating, because you're like, oh God, I have to answer so many of them. It's so boring. But you've got to remember it from the other side as well, that we're reading thousands of them, and that we love to see when somebody's put a bit more thought or a bit more personality into something, because it just means it's exciting for us to come across somebody where you can feel their drive and energy and personality, and that will automatically make you stand out. I'd love to come on to mistakes. So we've obviously talked about AI, unfiltered AI usage being a very big one. But I suppose, what are the kind of common mistakes that you see people making when they are looking at starting out in their career journey, whether that's in application, interview, or even kind of, the first few weeks? I'd love to start with you, Rosine.
Sure. I would say for me, it's not preparing enough, and that's be it for the role in itself or for the interview phase. So we have a lot of early talents who come with, I want this job, or they just want a job. And you can see that they haven't really reflected on why I want this particular job, and take the time to really understand the role. So my advice would be really read the job description carefully, because I know there's a lot of jargon sometimes with this is what we are as a company, but you do have a lot of the job qualification and requirements. What are the nice to have? What are the must have? So just like carefully read through it, research about the company, think about your own experience and strengths, so you can do those connections between the company, what they're looking for, and the experience that you actually have and those skills that we talked about. And also ask yourself the tough questions. And when I say that, is really to have that self-reflection about, why do I want to join that company? Do the values just fit with what I believe in? And then, why I want this role and what do I want to achieve in this role? So doing a little bit of that self-digging and reflection, because sometimes with early talents as recruiters or campus engagement lead, you feel like a psychologist. Like, it's just like, okay, I have this and I want this. Like, what can you offer me? And like, try not to do that. Try to do that like research within yourself first, so you can come prepare and be like, yeah, this is what I want, and then do it. So for me, that's that. Just do your homework.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Ultimately, it's a game of give and take on both sides, but also I think you need to have that awareness that when you're starting out in your career, you've got a bit less power to take. You kind of get that more and more as you get more senior or more skilled or more valuable. And so as you start out early on, it's better to go in thinking, okay, what can I give to this and how much can I get from it in return? Gina, I'd love to hear from you in terms of mistakes.
I think again, Rosine, you summed that up really well. I would just build on that and thinking more around the application process as well. We did allude to this before, but generic answers, just they're your biggest trap. Do you know what I mean? Don't fall into it. If your application can be sent to 10 other different companies, it's not going to stand out. And we've already spoken about AI. Again, it's really, really obvious. So just use it for the research. This is the key thing. Don't skip the research, whether you use AI to do that or whether you go and read a book to do it or go and stand at a station and watch the trains go by. Like, however it is that you actually do it, I think that's the most important part. You can tell when someone hasn't really looked into it and doesn't know the company that they've applied for. So just keep it simple, be really specific. And we spoke about this already, but talk about what excites you about that particular role, or even the organization. Just a short, genuine reason will make a massive difference compared to that generic response.
Awesome. And Claire, what mistakes have you seen?
Yeah, I would say actually it's around the research point, but I'll take a slightly different angle. Knowing what you're being assessed on, in terms of activities, for example, whether it's assessment centres, we have them for particular parts of the business, not all. Whether it's an interview, but is that interview strengths-based? Is it competency-based? I think we find candidates who aren't particularly sure, haven't read all the information about what we're actually, the activity that we're assessing, but also what we're looking for. So an understanding what like a strengths-based interview is, so it's all around potential, but actually even when you're answering questions on how do you work in this situation, how do you feel in this environment, you can still give examples. So I'd just follow on with that sometimes we see candidates in strengths-based interviews thinking, I can't give an example and say, I'm a strong team player, but don't say how and when they've done that before. So I'd say, really understanding the stages of the selection process for that employer, because they all differ. They'll all be looking for certain things from you, and then being able to really talk about examples, whether it's a strengths-based interview or competency-based, which aligns to that. So I'd say those are the things that I would add.
Yeah, adding that context is super powerful because it helps people to be able to imagine what you will be like in the workplace, which is a really valuable thing to push them to do. Becky, I would love to come to you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I think, is just don't undersell yourself. You know, like everybody has something to bring to an organisation. And I think a lot of us can doubt ourselves. And particularly earlier in your career, like we've said, you think, oh, I have no experience to back this up. But actually you do, in one form or another, whether it's a hobby, a situation you've faced, a skill you've learnt, you do. So just remember, we're not looking for perfection. We are looking for potential. So I think a mistake I see is people doubting themselves and not, you know, putting themselves forward in the best way possible. And sometimes that's uncomfortable to do, but also that will help you in your career longer term as well. So just, yeah, it's that classic, what's that phrase? Be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and just really try to, present yourself in a way that should be proud of your achievements and that you want to build on.
Really valuable advice. I think probably everybody in the audience will take little bits of that and hopefully apply that in their application and interview journey. Now, we've got loads of different questions that have come through from other platforms, from LinkedIn, that our team have been sending through as well. So I would love to start to tackle some of them. So starting from the beginning here, we've got a really specific one, which I think would be really useful to answer, from David. He says, I'm currently undertaking a master's in data science and will complete this on September the 1st. When is the right time to start applications? And how did you find the working environment right after school with no experience? And like, kind of what was your experience there? I was going to start with Claire, but she's sadly disappeared. I hope she can get back in. So I will start with Gina.
Thank you. So hi, David. Thank you for your question. It all depends on probably the company that you want to, or the environment or the organization that you're kind of interested in, I would say. Every business probably has a slightly different time of when they launch early careers roles. So the best advice I could probably give is to make a short list, basically, like get your favorites, the people that you are really interested in, that you do find that connection with, whether it's in the industry that you like or that you've got a passion for, or whether it's just something that really piques that interest for you, and start to understand from then what time do they go out, because I know a lot of people might start advertising in September, some do advertise in January, and it all just depends. And you could start applying now for that future kind of position, knowing that you've got that lined up when you do finish your degree. So it's a bit of a politician answer, because I'm not giving a straight answer, but I don't think there is a one size fits all, because it all depends on, I suppose, where you want to go. And the second part of that question, how did you find the work environment right after school with no experience? That was something that I went straight into, actually, as well. I moved from a smaller town in the rural northwest a coastal town, not too far from Blackpool, moved to Manchester, moved to a city, and straight away went into the world of work. So big transition, and it is different. It is different to what you expect. You're in a 9 to 5. This was pre-COVID, so there wasn't much of that working from home or anything either. So you are in an office all the time. It is a totally different environment. But you will find, and this is the one thing I will say, everyone starts somewhere, and everyone is very understanding to people that are in those early careers roles. They want to support, they want to help. You're never going to be left to your own devices. You will have that consistent support. So I do think that take the reassurance. It might feel daunting because it's new, but I'm positive that you'll have lots of support, whichever path that you do go down.
Brilliant. Becky, I'd love to hear your opinion on that question that's there.
Yeah, I would agree with Gina on the timeline piece. Again, you're looking a year ahead, really, if you're wanting to apply to a grad and apprentice program. But obviously, like we said, a direct hire role is different. The transition from kind of a learning environment into the workplace, I think, again, it's different for everybody. But I personally found it quite daunting. Moved up to London. And I think it was the really simple things I struggled with, like, what do people wear to the office? They're saying all these acronyms. I don't know what that means. Or I'm in meetings. Should I be contributing? But I don't really know what they're talking about. And all of those things. But in time, you build that confidence, you find your feet, and you just have to kind of trust the process, communicate, have a support network, and it will come. But there's no two ways about it. It's a transition. And if you've come from a learning environment, things are very structured and kind of given to you around this is what you need to do within this kind of criteria. And actually in the workplace, some of it is you have to find the answers yourself. But again, you learn problem solving skills. And so there's definite skills you learn, which can feel daunting, but that's why I think having people around you to ask and to support you through that, which you will find. And ultimately you've joined that company for a reason, for their values, for their people. And again, that will show up when you are in the workplace.
Brilliant. Great advice. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to do 2 answers per question so that we get through all of them. So the next question has come through from Lily, and she asks, what's one myth about getting your first office job that isn't true? Claire, I'd love to come to you for this.
Oh, it's a good question. What's the one myth? I'm trying to think. Everyone knows what they're doing.
Yep.
I think we're all still working it out, whether you're the senior person in the room or the most junior. I think, look, it's very much around, especially if it's your first job, that that finding the environment that will support you, and where they've got like a mentor or a buddy system in place. I think everybody's learning, and I say to my team still, and I'm 10+ years in early careers, every day's a school day. I still find something, I'm like, I didn't know we did that, or I didn't know I could do it that way. So I think, look, not everybody knows what they're doing. We might all pretend and fake it till we make it, but ultimately everybody is learning something in the role that they're in. So I think it's just that, as the other panelists have said, having that confidence in yourself that you've been hired for a reason. Come in, and give it your best shot, and that should be good enough. Good is good enough.
Totally agree with that. And Rosine, what would you add?
I'll say that I hear sometimes that you need a network to be able to land your first job, in some of the big companies. And I said, for me, that's totally a myth. It's just really about going through the process, showing yourself, like all of those tips that we gave. And you can get a foot in some of those big companies, even though you have no network at all or no person referring you. So yes, it could be an advantage, but it's not like the holy grail to be able to work in those big companies if you want to, and those big names.
Totally agree with that. I think that's such a valuable myth to point out, is that yes, of course a network is helpful, but the majority of people do come into companies without them. And the application and the kind of interview criteria are set up to be able to assess people without those networks and get you into the right roles. Really valuable thing to point out. So another question that has come through from another platform is, what is your advice for somebody who struggles with confidence in interview settings, which I totally understand can be very daunting? I would love to come to Becky first of all.
Yeah, I think firstly, just know that is probably the majority of people, even if you've interviewed a lot. Like me personally, I still do not like interviewing. So I think that's a very normal feeling. You're out of your comfort zone. So firstly, just know that. My advice would be practice, practice, practice. So the research, what the company is going to be asking you. We share some of our interview questions on our website. So again, other companies may do that, so you can prepare. Obviously, other things may come up as well. So prepare as much as you can. You know what the company's looking for. You might know what the questions are. So prepare some answers, practice with your family, practice with people you trust to give you some feedback, to give you some of that confidence. Also, when you are actually in the interview, it is okay to take a moment, reflect, think about your answer. I think there's always this feeling of, oh my gosh, I've got to know something straight away and come straight back with an answer. But it's okay if you just say, okay, I just need a minute to just think of my answer and then come back with your thoughts. So again, that's my advice. Don't feel like you've straight away got to jump and then you forgot where you were going with that. So pause, take a moment and practice, practice, practice. And just know the interviewer wants you to do well. A good interviewer will be wanting you to feel comfortable in that environment. They're asking questions to get the best out of you and to try and help get to that, to get to the heart of what you're trying to say. So no one's there to try and catch you out, or at least they shouldn't be. But they want you to do well. So again, just bear that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable advice. Ultimately, it might feel a bit like you're being interrogated, but the majority of people are there exactly to get the best out of you. I have had some where they're definitely out to trip you up, but you don't want to work there if that's the case. Claire, I'd love to come to you for your advice for this person asking about confidence in interviews.
Yeah, same really. Like, the interview is a human too. If you've already got to that stage, normally in a recruitment process, it tends to be the final stage of the process. So just have that confidence in yourself that if you have got to that stage of that process, that employer, that interviewer, if they're the person that screens the applications as well, for example, has already seen things in you that they think would be the right fit. So it's just confirmation of it. It's just a check-in, really. I think to the point earlier, practice mock interviews, career services normally offer that service. I used to work at a university prior to getting to early careers. We do mock interviews with students who wanted to practice. That's really key. And it's just about shifting the mindset, really. So nerves are normal. Normally means that you want something and it's important to you. But it's about taking that nervous energy, and I think we've all said we all still get nervous, I still get nervous, and channeling it in a way that demonstrates enthusiasm and knowing that that you've already shown the things that employer is looking for.
Yeah, really valuable advice there. We've got time for one or two more questions, I think. So Peter asks, thanks to everybody for all of the great insights so far. I'm just wondering, after a graduate candidate has applied, are there any other ways that we can continue to show enthusiasm and interest in the company before they make that decision as to whether you'll come forward or not? Rosine, I would love to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, I think sometimes what you can do is, if you remember the name of your recruiter, add them on LinkedIn, say, send a nice thank you notes. I really appreciate it. The interview process, and, like, share a little bit of your excitement. Don't go overboard though. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then keeping interested about the company. But yeah, I think that's mainly what I saw a few candidates do before, just connecting on LinkedIn, saying thank you, connecting with other people on LinkedIn that and yeah, commenting on posts. That's also good. That shows interest, and getting into events. Just even if you're not sure about what's the answer of your process, but getting into any campus events, for example, early talent events, just to get like that bit of the company culture even more. It's also always good because it shows that you're trying to do that extra step.
That's really valuable advice. I think super important, that visibility. Gina, would you add anything to answer that question from Peter there?
Very, very much similar from me. I would say follow up with the people that you have had conversations with. Follow up appropriately, I think, is the right way. As you sort of said there, Rosine, as well. Engaging with the company in different ways, like following them on LinkedIn, on socials, keeping up with their culture. If they do have a separate sort of life app page, you can it keeps you interested as well. I think that's also important to sort of make sure that you're still just as interested in the company if you're interviewing with a few different people at the same time, and that actually just reaffirms that this is the company for you. Maybe you discussed some skills, some like feedback in that interview as part of development, and you could say, actually, I really appreciate our conversation. I've just got this book on employee experience or something, and and I've started to look at this, and it really fascinates me. Looking forward to hearing back from you. And again, it's following up appropriately, finding that balance. But absolutely, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that, Rosine. So not too much more to add from me.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think the most important thing is, if you are reaching out, particularly if it's maybe before you've had an interview or before you've done an assessment centre, never ever reach out before you've applied, because the first thing you're going to be told is go and apply. You will not get a different answer from anybody. So the best thing to do is, even if it is application, you want to stand out. Like if you're applying for like a small company, we get it all the time, where if we've got something open, somebody applies, and then if somebody drops a really nice note and it's like, I'm really excited about this because of XYZ reason, we're much more likely then for them to stick in the forefront of the points. But you will be negatively thought of if you go, can I discuss the role before you've even applied? Because you'll get hundreds of those messages, and it's impossible to respond, even though obviously the sentiment is well-meaning. we have run out of time, but we've still got loads of different questions that we haven't answered. So what we will do for our audience, if you are sitting there waiting for an answer to your question, we will prepare some blog content answering all of those questions. We'll get some answers from our panelists and we'll have that all written up. So please do check back on Flexa and you'll be able to see the answers to your questions just written up nice and succinctly for you. But otherwise, thank you so much to everybody in the audience for joining us and spending that hour with us. And thank you particularly to our wonderful panelists for sharing your own experiences, all of that wonderful advice, and hopefully really giving people a bit of a head start when it comes to Q4 and early careers season, and people really thinking about their